Right, because white men that are in their 70s have a level of perpetual adolescence that we are just waiting for them all to grow into themselves, right? That they can both be these fragile babies that need caretaking, and then
they
also
have a benefit,
these bold
and I'm
men.
sorry to keep interrupting you, but they get a benefit of the doubt extended to them constantly that women never do, people of color never do, women of color never do. We never get that.
No, because it is by virtue created to elevate their masculinity, which is so overtly toxic, but plays into the patriarchy that this country was built on. I digress. When you realize that you're like, oh my God, this is who is going to buoy this man, this family into the presidency, and no one is, not even your colleagues in this space, not even those that also share your Jewish faith are recognized. Like, do you feel crazy? Did you feel like at some point maybe you are making too much of a big deal about this? Like,
well, to be fair, a lot of people did stand up for me. A lot of people did push back. I mean, Wolf Blitzer directly asked Trump about it. I mean, he is also Jewish, and he was, he directly went right to the source because he recognized it for what it was. And a lot of people did, but there were a lot of people who, I would say it was split. There were people who recognized the danger, but I think for the most part, people saw it again. The people who rallied behind me and sent me messages and sent me flowers, which was like, what? I don't need flowers. Like, I'm good. They saw it as a personal thing. They saw it as a personal attack, as opposed to like, as opposed to the thing that I was trying to convey, which is it's not about me personally. It's about the fact that this is what happens when Melania Trump didn't like what I said about her defunct skincare line. And they're not even in the White House.
Yet. Right.
Yeah. Like, this is not about me, and I don't need flowers. I'm okay. Right. Like, this is ultimately, this is just, like at that moment, I was like, it's just Twitter and phone calls. Like, I'm okay. But let's talk about like what this means. And then it was interesting when it happened to Jonathan Weissman, a man, and everybody's like, oh, okay, now this is serious. And then he like gets a book deal and writes a book about it and like makes a bunch of money on it. And I was like, for fuck's sake. And he very much made it about himself and about his like victimhood. And I was like, again, it's not about you, the person. It's about
creating a climate of no dissent. Right?
Exactly.
It's creating a climate of no dissent. And what are the countries that we look at where you aren't?
Hungary,
right?
Russia.
Right. Russia, where Fox News loves to broadcast from and loves to elevate. You look at Russia, you look at Putin,
or Hungary, where Viktor Orban was just saying we don't want to become a mixed race country, and now he's opening CPAC
in Texas.
And Tucker Carlson helped open, was like speaking at his thing.
And Republicans defended Orban, who's the leader of Hungary, which is now a regressive, authoritarian, quote democratic state, and they're seeing Hungary as the model for the United States of America. And Viktor Orban got into power, and this is why I'm trying to connect the dots. He got into the power by promoting these anti-Semitic conspiracy theories, and as Julia said openly just a week ago, said we're against mixed race societies. And his longtime advisor, who stood by the anti-Semitism, the misogyny, the racism, this was a bridge too far. The longtime advisor resigned and said, whoa, this is like Nazi. This is what they said. The advisor said, this reminds me of Nazi propaganda. This is
everything else is okay. It's like the Nazis. It's like the Nazis who decided to assassinate Hitler in 1944.
They're like, I think he might be going too far with this war and he might lose.
Everything else was 1944 was okay. The previous 11 years were cool.
It's the same thing with them right now with the insurrection. January 6th was the day they resigned. So they are on Team Sane. But all the fucking 4 years before that, we were good.
And that's an actual quote, right, from Bill Stepien, who was in the White House, that we were Team Normal, but Rudy was Team Crazy.
Yeah, and Bill Stepien, who is now back on, like, helping to run all these MAGA campaigns all over the country, right?
The reason why, and I appreciate you really being personal like this, Julia, and us exploring this, is connecting the dots is important, because one would assume that enough people who warned, right? And I think the double standard that you and Danielle are talking about is very important, because we talk about this. Women warned. Black women warned. Muslims warned. Yes. You as a Jewish woman, I think it's very important, being a woman. You're like, you in your career. I
was like, ding, 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 ding.
But not only that, you didn't get rewarded. You didn't fail up like Mick Mulvaney at CBS or Chris Christie. What people also don't know about your career. I was
fucking punished. I was kicked out of the club.
You were kicked out of the club. You were punished. We won't go into the details, but your editors had said, keep quiet. Don't be a mouthy woman. And we could talk about that if we have time. But here we are now in 2022. And it seems that what happened to you got magnified 1,000-fold, right? On a macro level. We're witnessing it. January 6th, punishing people of color, right? Like literally right now, the mainstreaming of fascism, literally inviting Viktor Orban to freaking Texas. It's happening right now. And yet our media establishment, which you are a part of, still fails to see it. It seems that we're both siding fascism. And for our listeners, Danielle and I criticize this, but as an insider, explain to us why they still haven't gotten it yet. Like, why are they still going?
I would push back that I'm a part of the establishment. I'm at a startup. I don't have, a contract at any of these networks. Like,
no, pardon me. I meant this ecosystem really well.
Yeah. And it nauseates me. I think because this is something I find really troubling about Washington. I came from, I really cut my teeth in journalism reporting in Moscow, where the real journalists are the independent journalists, which means they're de facto opposition journalists. And there is a barricade between them and the state. And there is a built-in adversarial relationship. And there's no, and it's gotten worse and worse and worse. And now it's just like all out war on the independent, and the government won. But when I was there, and it was still kind of, as the Russians say, it was like vegetarian times. It was a very adversarial relationship, and there was no confusing, the independent journalists weren't insiders. Like, there was no confusing them for insiders. Some people had very good sources. Sometimes they went to these parties, but they were not insiders. And then I got to Washington and I was like, wait, what is going on here? They've become insiders. They're like part of the same system, and they benefit from the same things, and they stick around forever, and they're part of the same forever system. And no matter who wins, and I think that's kind of what underpinned the whole kind of let's not jump to conclusions, and let's not rush to judgment. Let's not panic. You guys are being hysterical, because in Washington, really, no matter who wins, nothing much changes. Everybody makes money. Everybody gets access. Everybody writes their pieces and gets their book deals, and people go into the administration, and those who come out go into think tanks or into the private sector, and then the door rotates back again, and you all go to the same parties and the same dinners and whatever. And things in Washington don't really change no matter who's in office. And they changed a lot during the Trump era, but if anything, the journalistic class did even better than in previous administrations. These journalists who covered Trump became celebrities. People, they would tell me, people would come up to them and buy them drinks and be like, oh my God, thank you so much for your service, for what you're doing. People would come up to them and ask them for autographs. They were getting these crazy book deals that no journalist had ever got. Like, nobody got book deals like that for covering even the Obama administration, let alone like the W. Bush administration, right? And they, but I think it was generally like, things are going to be okay. The institutions, blah, 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 as if the institutions are these like benevolent robots who will always save us because they're just programmed to do that, as opposed to they're just buildings full of people who just want to make a living and pay their mortgages and send their kids to school and maybe don't have many other career options. So if their boss sends down an order that might be uncomfortable to carry out, they might still do it because they need a job. Because that's also how institutions work sometimes, which is something that Mitch McConnell understands, which is why he packs the judiciary, because he understands that it's just people, which is why he wants his people in these institutions. Anyway, and I think that's kind of why people were so blasé about it, because they were like, look, it's just another institution. It's just another guy. We know, like, yeah, these are kind of D-listers, but we'll figure them out. We'll get to know them. We'll have some drinks with them. They'll become our sources too. We'll figure it out. It'll be fine. There was none of them had skin in the game. They weren't, none of their family members were going to get deported. They weren't getting real. And then they started getting threats. And then, the white guys started getting threats. And like, it was so funny to see the white guy reporters put up the hate mail they started getting. Because I was like, oh, child, I would take that hate mail any day of the week and Sunday. Because it was like, you libtard idiot. I hate your piece. And they were like, oh my God, these readers are so mean. And I'm like, oh, how many rape threats did you get today? Oh, none? Oh, cool. And they were like, this is what a hostile climate for media.